So how is it we engage them? Now that we understand about communication, now that we understand it's not just about talking, it's not just about going down a checklist, but it's about causing them to understand, causing them to comprehend and retain that information, how do we engage them? Well, we have designed what we call a tailgate meeting tip board, and this tip board is going to be a useful tool for conducting the tailgate meeting. There are many tips on here. I'm going to cover just a few of those high-level tips. We'll be covering the rest a little bit later. One of the first things we want to understand is ask, don't tell. That's a motto we want to use from now on. Never tell them something they can tell you. So we want to ask them some open-ended questions. We already talked about how to conduct those open-ended questions, how to develop them, how to compose them. Ask the open-ended questions to get the discussion rolling. And don't tell them something that you know they can tell you. So I don't want to tell the people in the tailgate meeting that they need this PPE and this PPE and this PPE if they can tell me that. Why? Because the more they can tell me, the more they own that information. The more they are engaged, the more they're likely to act upon what it is we're talking about. Lead it, don't read it. Another motto that we want to communicate to you. You don't want to you don't want to read a tailgate meeting, you want to lead a tailgate meeting. Tailgate meeting should be led, not read. Now we can choose any one of those combinations. I'm just throwing some things out. Make eye contact. If all I'm doing is staring down at the form, I'm not engaging people with my eyes, and I need to do that. That's part of communication. Close proximity. If I'm very far away from everybody else, they're much more likely to be disengaged. But if I kind of close the proximity by walking toward them, making eye contact, engaging them, projecting my voice, doing a lot of other things that I need to do that Brian will be talking about a little bit later for leadership presence, I'm going to engage them better that way. Eliminate distractions. One of the things that you heard on the bad tailgate meeting that you saw earlier was the noise problem that we didn't really take care of. If there is a noise problem, you've got about 3 options, don't you? You've got the option of shutting off the source of the noise. That's one option. Now, if you can't do that, moving the meeting is another option so that you don't have that noise conflicting with what it is you're saying. The third option is to project your voice, speak a little bit louder. So if the first 2 options are not options, you're going to have to compensate and maybe sometimes overcompensate for that noise. You do not want some source of noise competing with your message about safety. Project your voice. That's something I've already talked about. Make sure that you are talking to the last person in the room. So if you've got a tailgate meeting or a safety huddle, you don't want to make the first row your audience. You want to make the last row your audience. If you do that, your voice is going to be strong enough to be heard by everybody. Position the group. If you have a safety huddle or a tailgate meeting, you don't want anybody behind you. You want to make sure that everybody is front and center of you. And even beforehand, if you've got a source of noise that you may be competing with, go ahead and before you have that meeting, walk around the parameter where you think people are going to be standing and see if you're going to have some competing sources of noise out there. And if you do, huddle them in a little bit further. Just bring them in. Draw that imaginary line to make sure nobody crosses that line so you're ensuring they are hearing the message loud and clear. Use a prop or a visual aid. We talked about this earlier. This V8 can is no longer a V8 can when it's on a man lift. What is it? It's a projectile, right? It's something that can be deadly. Use a prop or a visual aid any time you can to reinforce the point that you're making. And another idea is to rotate tailgate meeting leaders. You don't always have to be the one to lead this thing. You've got several people in that meeting that can lead it as well. And if you assign responsibilities to them, they'll take more ownership for their own safety and the safety of others.